class. So a brief recap about yesterday's class is that in yesterday's class we saw what a control system is. So we saw that there can be an open loop control system, there can be a closed loop control system, and in a control system there are two basic components. One is that if we want to connect, you have a controller, and then you have a plant or a system which you need to control, and there is a input to this whole system, there is an output, and there can be another something which is known as a feedback. So the main thing about a control system is that what we need to do in a practical control system is that mostly what we have to do is that you have to design a controller such that if you give an input to the system, you will get a desired output. Okay, so for designing of that controller, designing of the controller and designing the system in such a way that your desired output is obtained, we need to have you need to know a few parameters, or you need to choose the components of the system appropriately. So we saw that we were just talking about briefly that what are the systems that you need to or the elements that you need to choose. So first of all is that you need to choose what will be your feedback element, then you need to know what is your actuator, and then finally you have to do a mathematical modeling. Now what do we mean by mathematical modeling and why that is important while designing a controller? We'll look into that in this lecture. So a mathematical model, if you see the definition of a model, so the definition of a model is that it is an elemental or mathematical representation of a system. So why do we need this model is because we need to know that what will be the input and the output relationship of the system. So let us say that you have let us consider the system as a black box. If that is the case, then you provide some input to the system and you are getting some output to the system. So then if you have multiple different types of input to the system, obviously depending on how the system is behaving, the output of the system will change. So what we need to do or what a model helps is that it helps us to capture the dynamics of the system. That is how the output how the input is translated to the output, and what is the relationship between the input and the output. So but in crude terms we can say that is what is the evolution of the system variables that are happening, that is being captured by modeling the system. So let us say that if you have an AC, so then how the temperature is changing in the AC, or how fast or how slow the temperature will reach the desired temperature. That is one sort of system dynamics. Then if you have a car, then the car is moving and then you are pressing applying some pressure on the accelerator pedal. So at what position you should apply the pressure such that you get a proper desired speed of the car. So these things, they can be obtained if you can model a system using some criteria. So, but here we need to understand one thing is that modeling is not always like 100% accurate. So any physical system, it can be modeled using some mathematical expressions, but we have to do some kind of assumptions while doing this mathematical modeling, because in case of in order to know the input-output behavior, we need to do the model, and there is some sort of assumptions which we'll see what all assumptions we need to take while we are doing a model. So first of all, let us see what are mostly the steps which are involved while doing a mathematical modeling. First of all, if you have a system, so first you need to know that what is the purpose of the model. Why are you trying to model the system? Then the second thing is that you should define the boundaries, and you should know that what is the environment in which your system is working, what all are the disturbances which might be there, which might affect the output of the system. Then that is the second step. In the third step, what you need to do is that you need to postulate a structure and see what all are the variables of interest. Variables of interest as in what all are the input parameters that inputs that you are applying to the system. Every one of the blocks, and then based on that mathematical modeling, you have to apply the certain physical or physical laws. Like if it is an electrical system, then you will be applying Kirchhoff's law. If you are dealing with a mechanical system, then you will be applying some normal the physical laws such as Newton's law and all, whichever is applicable for your system. And then finally you have to combine everything together and get the final mathematical model. So depending on the, so there are like 3 types of mathematical model which are in general very commonly used while modeling a system. So first of all is the differential equation model. In this differential equation model, the dynamics of the system that is usually represented in terms of differential equations, and it can be of the order of first order differential equation, second order, or even higher order, depending on what is the system that you have and how accurately you want to model the system. And mostly this differential equation model that is used for time domain representation of a system. Okay, the second type of modeling is known as transfer function model. So in the transfer function model also, the dynamics of the system that is represented, instead of using a differential equation, we are using a Laplace transform of the same differential equation, and then we are getting a transfer function model. And this transfer function model that is mostly used for frequency domain analysis or frequency domain representation of any system. And the third one is the state space model. And so in case of a state space model, that is mostly used when you have a multiple input, multiple output kind of a system. And state means that it is a set of variables which describes the that can describe how a particular quantity in a system is varying. Okay, so the dynamics of the system that is usually represented by a set of linear differential equations, and from the linear differential equations, what we do is that we take the coefficients of the derivative terms and the variable terms that we have, and from the coefficients we form a vector matrix, and that representation of the system dynamics in form of a matrix that is known as the state space model. So we'll discuss all the 3 types of modeling subsequently in the later lectures. So first of all, we'll start talking about the so first let's give me an example of how the 3 types of models look like. So here we have a simple RLC circuit. So if you write the differential equation of this RLC circuit, so the current which is flowing through this series RLC is, if that is I, then we can write that the total voltage V is nothing but equals to IR plus L di dt plus 1 by C integral of I dt. Okay, now if we take the derivative of both sides, then it will be R di dt L d2i dt square plus I by C. Yeah, okay, so this is the equation that is used for defining the so this is a differential equation which defines the voltage, the input output relationship. So the input is voltage and the output is the current that is flowing through the system. So the input output relationship can be defined by this kind of a differential equation. So this is so you can say that this equation is a differential equation model of the whole RLC series RLC system. Similarly, if you want to see the transfer function model, so what will we do is that we'll just take the Laplace transform of this whole equation. So the Laplace transform of this equation will be, if I write it in, so this will be V into RIS plus LS into IS plus 1 by SC into IS. And then if you write in this form, or rather So if we write it in output by input form, that will be equals to 1 by R plus SL plus 1 by SC. So this is that in the frequency domain, because we have done we have taken the Laplace transform. So now the time, so in this differential equation you see that the independent variable was time. So with respect to time we are taking the derivative. So this is, you can say that this is a time domain representation of the whole system. But when we are taking the transfer function, dealing with the transfer function model, then we are moving from the time domain to the frequency domain. So we are replacing. So now we have S, which is nothing but theta plus sigma plus j omega. So now we are moving into the frequency domain analysis part. So then you can write that this equation is the transfer function model of the series RLC circuit. Now, if you want to see the state space model, so in the state space model, you have like two, let us say that we have two differential equations. So the first one is, let us say the current. So one equation is this di dt. Let us say the current which is flowing, if flowing through the inductor, if that is IL, but IL is anyways equals to the total I. So DIL dt will be equals to, if you write it in terms of V, 1 by V minus R by L into IL minus 1 by L into VC. Okay, and the other equation is, let us say the current which is flowing through this, we define it as IC. Current through the IL is this is IL, so that means IC is equals to C dVC dt. Okay, so now you have two differential equations, and if you want to write the state space model, then the state space model will look like something like this. So you represent, so you have two variables. So I have one variable is, let's say, DIL by dt. The other one is dVC by dt. So this will be equals to minus R by L 1 by C minus 1 by L 0. You have IL over here, VC over here, and then plus 1 by L 0, and this is the voltage. So this is the, so we are using two differential equations instead of using one differential equation of second order. We are using two differential equations of first order, and then from these two first order differential equations we are forming a vector representation or a matrix representation. So that is known as the state space model of this whole system. Okay, okay, so there are like these physical systems, they can be classified into, like, there can be a electrical system, mechanical system, then hydraulic, electronic, thermal. There are different kind, pneumatic, all different kinds of physical systems are there. So while modeling, what we need to do is that you have to model each system in terms of very basic elements. So this when we are dealing with an electrical system, the basic elements will be resistance, capacitance, inductance. So you have to model the system with those parameters, and we'll see that across domains. So across electrical domain or mechanical domain or thermal domain, there is a analogy which is present between the different kinds of parameters. So while we analyze the systems, we'll see how this analogy looks like. Hello. So first of all, we should talk about what all are the assumptions that we are making while designing a model. So the first assumption is that we are making sure that there is space. We are ignoring the spatial distribution of elements. So what do we mean by spatial distribution? So for example, if we are talking about temperature of a room, then we are assuming that the temperature of the room is ideally the temperature of the room is distributed over the room. So if you go at different points in the room, you will find that maybe the temperature at one corner of the room might not be the same as the temperature at the other corner of the room. So there is a spatial distribution of temperature in the room. But while we are doing the modeling, we are ignoring that and we are assuming that the temperature in the whole room is constant. So we are assuming that at wherever position in the room you are going, the temperature, the value of the temperature that you are getting, that is constant. So we are mostly ignoring the spatial distribution of the elements, and this kind of modeling is generally known as lumped parameter model. So this is known as lumped parameter model. And so this is actually a simpler way of modeling. But if you want to do a more accurate, if your need is such that you have to have a very accurate modeling of the system, then you have to go for distributed parameter model. So in case of this distributed parameter model, you consider the spatial distribution. So how the temperature is varying inside the room, that parameter is taken into consideration while we are dealing with a distributed parameter model. But for now, for the models that we will be talking about or in this lecture, we will not consider the distributed parameter model. We will be considering mostly on the lumped parameter model. And the second assumption that we are taking is that the variables with which we are working, the variables that are associated with the elements in the system, that lie in the range such that they can be described by a simple linear law. So we are mostly looking into linear kind of systems. So the second one is that the variables associated with the elements, they lie in the range such that the element can be described by simple linear laws. So this linear law, it can be a proportionality, proportional way. It can be a first order derivative. It can be a first order integral. So as long as we are dealing with these kind of things, or it can be first order integral. So mostly we will try to model our systems using equations which are linear in nature. Okay, so now we'll talk about a single port or two terminal representation. So any system that, so if you have a system like this and you have, let us say there is an input, there is an output. So this is your some element, let us say. Okay, so there are two kind of variables which is associated with this element. So one is the through variable. So as the name suggests, through variable is something which is going into the element and flowing through the element and coming out from the other side. So that means if so the through variable will be, let us say Vt. Vt is something which is flowing, so the input, and then it is going out from the other side. So that is the through variable. So in general, the through variable are like current, force, torque. These are like common examples of this through variable. And what is the across variable? Across variable means the variable which is there, which is present across the two terminals of the element. So if this is terminal 1 and this is terminal 2 of the element, so the variable which is present across these two terminals, let us say that is as VA, that is known as the across variable. Okay, so across, so for example, if the element is a resistor, so that means the through variable will be the current which is flowing through the resistor, and the across variable will be the voltage drop across the resistance. So these are the two kinds of variables that we'll mostly encounter. And then we have the input variable. So the input variable is the independent variable, and so this is your input variable. Here you will have your output variable, and the output variable is the dependent variable, so which is dependent on the input that we are providing into the system. Okay, so now let's talk about a few electrical systems. So in case of an electrical system, there can be two types of source. So one can be any electrical system can be sourced by using a voltage source, or there can be an current source also. So we'll see that in case of a voltage source system, the basic elements remains the same. In both the cases, the basic elements are resistance, capacitance, and inductance. But the basic system variables, when we are dealing with a voltage source system, then the basic system variables are voltage and charge. We'll see why we are considering voltage and charge as the basic basic variables. And similarly, for a current source system, the basic variables are current and flux. Okay, so now let us see that we have a parallel RLC circuit. We have a parallel RLC circuit. So let us consider this as this is my node 1. If that is the case, then if you write the KCL at this node 1, and this is a current sourced system. Okay, if you write so that means you can write that I is equals to IR plus IL plus IC, or you can write IR is equal, and if you see that the voltage between the 2 points is V, so that means you can write this is as V by R plus you will have 1 by L integral V dt plus C dV dt. Okay, so now we all know that the voltage is equals to the rate of change of flux with respect to time. So that means if you substitute the value of V with d phi dt, then you can write that I is equals to 1 by R d phi dt plus phi by L plus C d2 phi dt 2. Okay, so that means here the basic variables are, one is this current and the other one is this flux. So here in case of a current source system, the basic variables are current, which is I, and flux, which is phi. Similarly, if you see a series RLC circuit, so in a series RLC circuit, so this is a voltage sourced circuit. So in this case also, again, if you write the KVL around the loop, similarly we had written it just now. So V equals to IR plus L di dt plus 1 by C integral I dt. And we know that I is equals to rate of change of charge. So I equals to dq dt. So if you substitute this, you will get V equals to R dq dt plus L d2q dt square plus q by c. So in this equation you see that there are two variables. This is one variable is V, the other variable is this q. So here you can say that the basic variables are voltage and charge. Okay, so these are so now we will so till now we have seen that how to represent an electrical system using differential equation. So then we'll move on to the mechanical system, and later on we'll see, after analyzing this mechanical system, we'll see how this analogy between the mechanical and the electrical system is working. Okay, so this mechanical system, there can be two kinds of mechanical system. It can be a translational system or it can be a rotational system. So in case of a translational system, the basic elements that are present, that is, one is mass, then the other one is a damper, and the third one is a linear spring. If we are talking about a translational system, then we have a linear spring. Similarly, in case of a rotational system, the mass, instead of mass, we represent that with inertia. Damper still remains the same, and we have a torsional spring. And the basic system variables for translational mechanical system is force and displacement, while in case of a rotational system, we have torque and angular displacement. Okay, so in this case, this mechanical system. Okay, so now you have this mass. So now let us see that what is mass and inertia. So this mass and inertia, they are usually known as the conservative elements. So this mass and inertia, what they do is that they store. So mass is defined as the property of the element which stores the kinetic energy which is present due to the translational motion. So let us say that if you have a mass which is, let us say you have a mass m over here, and you're applying some force Ft, and because of that there is some motion xt. Okay, so if that there is a displacement xt, or you can say that the velocity is vt. So in that case, if the force Ft is acting on a body which has a mass of m and it causes a certain displacement f, then you can apply Newton's second law, which says that the force applied is equal to the rate of change of momentum. So if P is the momentum, so let us say P is equals to momentum. So then you can write that it will be equals to dp dt, which is nothing but, then again P equals to m into v. So you can write it will be m dv dt. Then again you can write v is equals to m dx dt. So you will have m d2x dt2. So in case of a mass, if there is a force which is applied, force F is applied, you can, the governing relation is F is equals to m into x double dot. X double dot is the acceleration. Okay, so this is the relation which is governing the mass. Similarly, if you see the translation, the rotational system, their mass is replaced by inertia. So in this case, that is also same, but it's just that it stores the kinetic energy in case of a rotational system. So similarly, if there is a torque J which is applied to a torque J is applied to a body which has an inertia of J, and it is causing an angular displacement of theta, then you can write J is equals to m theta, or sorry, so the force F or the torque T is equals to moment of the inertia into theta double dot. So this is the equation, or this is the governing relation of an inertia component. And these two, since they are storing this kinetic energy, so these are known as conservative elements. Similarly, if you see the difference between a linear spring and a torsional spring, so spring is something that converts, that also stores, here it stores the potential energy which is present due to a translational motion. So now let us say that if you have a spring like this, and the constant of the spring constant is, let's say, K. So what happens is that if you are applying some force F to the spring and it is causing an elastic displacement of X, then the definition of spring goes by that if a force is applied and a displacement X is occurring, then the spring will have a restoring force which will act in the opposite direction. So that means if this is my applied force, then the spring will apply an equal and opposite force in the opposite direction. So this is known as a restoring force. So that means overall you can say that Fs plus F will be equals to 0. So now this force F which is being applied, that is equals to K into X. So you can write that the restoring force that is being applied by the spring, that is equals to minus K into X. Similarly, when you have a torsional spring, so this thing will be, so you will have this T equals to, you will have T equals to K theta, and similarly you will have, if you want to see what is the energy which is being stored in the torsional spring, that will be equals to, energy stored will be equals to half K theta square. In case of a linear spring, the energy stored is equals to half K x square, and this is the potential energy that is being stored inside the linear spring or a torsional spring. So this linear spring and torsional spring, they are also these kind of conservative elements. And then we have one more element, which is known as the damper, and that is a dissipative element. Why is this called a dissipative element? Because this mostly represents the so this is a damper is basically an element which essentially generates a force which is acting in the opposite direction of the motion. So if you are having if a body is moving on, let's say a car is moving on a road, so the force of friction, if the car is moving in the, let's say the car, so this is the car which is moving in this direction. Okay, so this is the direction of displacement. So due to the friction that is present between the car wheels and the road, so that frictional force will be occurring in the opposite direction. So this is, let's say, the frictional force. So this frictional force, mostly this that is represented by a damper element, and that resists the main purpose of the damper is to resist the motion. So that is why it is known as a dissipative element. And some examples, so the examples will be this friction and dashpot. These kind of things are whenever you have a frictional force which is occurring in a system, then that is modeled, or that is represented by a damper. Now, if coming to the friction, so friction basically it exists whenever any mechanical surface is operating in sliding contact with another surface. And friction, as we all know from that, it acts in the direction opposite to in the direction which is opposite to the motion. So now there are like three kinds of frictions which are generally present. One is the Coulomb force, friction force. When the forces of sliding friction is between two dry surfaces, then that is known as the Coulomb friction force. So in general, this is mostly a constant value. Then you have a viscous frictional force. In viscous frictional force, what happens is that you have the sliding surfaces is separated by a viscous fluid. So that means you have a solid body and you have a fluid medium. So the friction which is happening between the solid body and the fluid medium, that is known as viscous frictional force. And this viscous friction is is approximately linearly proportional to the velocity of the solid body that we have. And then the third type of friction is known as stiction. So stiction is basically the force which is required to initiate motion between two contacting surfaces. So if you have two bodies which are not moving, so the amount of force that you need in order to make the body move or the body slide over the second surface, that is known as a stiction. But it might seem apparent that a friction is something which is not desirable. Yeah, because this is a dissipative element. This is hampering the motion that we are having. So that means it might be. So we might want to see. We might want to imagine that friction is something which is not necessary and this is an undesirable quantity. But later on we'll see that friction is actually important in some cases wherein we have to have some kind of frictional force or some kind of damping force is necessary in order to improve the dynamics of the system. So now let us analyze a mechanical system. So let us say that we have a simple spring mass and damper system. So, okay, so before moving into this spring mass and damper system, so do you have any doubts till now?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so So now we have connected, so we have a mass here and there is a spring and this is the damper. Okay, so let's say the damper is given by B. Okay, and we are applying some force on the whole system, and because of the applied force Ft, there is a displacement of the system. So now how we'll analyze this mechanical system is that first of all we'll draw the free body diagram. So we'll draw the free body diagram, and then after that we'll apply the Newton's law of motion, and we'll see what is the equation which is governing the whole system, governing the relationship between the force applied and the output displacement that we are getting. Okay, so now so this is the free body. So you have this mass. So the force, the applied force F is in this direction, The positive, the displacement is also in the rightward direction. And this spring and this damper, these two are actually applying some forces which are acting in the opposite direction, because the spring, the force is in opposite direction, let's say that is Fs, and because of the damper also it's in opposite direction, let us say that is Fd. Okay, so then once you have this free body diagram, then you write the Newton's law of motion, and you see that the overall mass, overall force which is being applied is F minus, or the effective force, this is the applied force, minus you have the force due to spring minus the force due to the damper. Sorry, this is force due to the damper, that will be equals to the effective force. So let's say that is F effective force which is actually resulting in displacement of the mass. So this effective, so if F effective is responsible for displacement of x, so then we can write this is equals to m into x double dot, and then you have F minus, this is B dx dt minus kx will be equals to m, let us write it in this way, dt2. So F, the applied force F will be equals to nothing but m x double dot plus b x dot plus kx. So this is how, this is the differential equation model of a spring mass damper system. Okay. Similarly, in case let's talk about or let's see an example of a mechanical accelerator. So mechanical accelerometer. This is not an accelerator. This is accelerometer. Okay. So in case of an accelerometer, what happens is that the spring mass damper system, that is actually attached to a moving vehicle. So if you draw the, so you have so there is a spring over here, then you have mass, then you have a damper over here, and this is attached. And this whole thing is attached to another scale. Okay. This is the 0 point. This is x. So this is a moving vehicle. So this x is the displacement of the moving vehicle, and then you have mass is m. This is spring with constant k, damper with constant b. So this one, and the motion of the accelerometer, the displacement that we are getting from the accelerometer, that is in the opposite direction. So this is connected to a scale. So this is basically a scale. This is also another scale. Okay. So here what happens is that whenever the vehicle moves, this is the frame of the accelerometer. Okay. So this is the frame of the accelerometer. So whenever the vehicle moves, the frame of the accelerometer is accelerated, and because of that acceleration, what will happen is that there will be a deflection in the spring, and the deflection in the spring will be until it reaches a certain point, after which, because of that spring, there will be a motion of this mass. Okay, so what the accelerometer does is that it measures the motion of this mass with respect to the motion of the vehicle. Okay, so so the deflection of the spring, that is in general, it is measured using a linear motion potentiometer. So here, if x is the displacement, let's say x is the displacement of the moving vehicle, with respect to a reference frame, and y is the displacement of this mass m with respect to the accelerometer frame. Then the force which is occurring on the mass because of this spring, that will be equals to, so the force due to spring, that will be equals to minus k into y, because the displacement of this system is y, and the force which is there because of the friction, which is because of this damper, so that Fd will be equals to minus b into dy dt. And the motion of this, and if you write the displacement of the mass with respect to the reference, then that motion is equal to motion of mass with respect to the fixed frame or the reference frame is equals to y minus x, because there will be a relative motion. X is in is positive in the right hand side direction, and y is positive in the left side. So then finally you can write that the force equation, if you write the force equation, then the mass m into d2. So now you have the force which is applied or which is experienced by this mass will be the overall displacement will be y minus x, so m d2 y minus x dt2, plus, because of the spring you have this ky, then you have, because of the damper, you have b dy dt, that will be equals to 0. Okay, so then all you can write it, you can take out y and x separately, so you will have m d2y dt2 plus b dy dt plus ky will be equals to m d2x dt2, which is nothing but m into a, where a is the acceleration, which is the input acceleration. So now if you have a constant input acceleration, so that means y becomes constant, and the moment y becomes constant, so that means all the derivatives of y will become equal to 0. So in that case you can write that for constant acceleration, so a equals to constant, then so this term becomes 0, this term becomes 0, this term becomes 0, so you can write ky is equal to m into a. So from here you can find the value of the input acceleration, which will be given by k by m into y. So if you measure the displacement y from this scale, then and provided that the acceleration which is being applied to the whole system is constant, then you can find out what is the overall acceleration of the system, and that will be dependent on the mass of the accelerometer as well as the spring constant of the accelerometer. Okay, so now if you see the analogy between the mechanical and the electrical system, so there can be like two kinds of analogy. So let me go to this equation. So this is the spring mass damper system. So where we have seen that the differential equation which is used to model this system is F equals to m d2x dt2 plus b dx dt plus kx, where x is the displacement and F is the force that is being applied. And if you compare it with the series RLC circuit, you see in the series RLC circuit you have voltage which is equals to L dq d2q dt square plus R dq dt plus q by c. So now if you compare these two equations, you see that these two are the equations are in a similar form. This has a double second order derivative, one first order derivative, and then one component without derivative. So if you compare, or if you if you compare these two equations, then you see that you can say that force here in case of a translational mechanical system, force is equivalent to the voltage. So this is the, so force is equivalent to voltage, then mass will be equivalent to inductance, the coefficient of friction will be equivalent to resistance, then coefficient of the spring constant is equal to reciprocal of capacitance, that is 1 by C, and this x, the displacement, will be equivalent to charge, and if you consider dx dt means the velocity will be equivalent to the current which is flowing. So from here you can see that if you know the mechanical system and electrical system, if you can represent them or model them using differential equations of the similar fashion, then there is, and you can say that the terms are analogous. So that the force, the term for, or the variable force in a mechanical system, that is analogous to the variable voltage which is there in the electrical system. Similarly, there can be another type of analogy which is force current analogy. In case of force current analogy, we'll just change the we'll use a parallel RLC circuit, and you write the equation, so which is I in terms of RLC and the flux. So here also you see, if you try to compare, you will see that force is equivalent to current, mass is equivalent to capacitance. These analogies will change. So there are like these two kinds of analogies which are present between electrical system and a mechanical system, and later on we'll see when we'll talk about thermal systems and all. Similarly, this kind of an analogy is present between across domain. So the moment you model different kinds of system, you will find that there is a certain pattern by which you can the variables which are present in each of the models that are analogous to each other. Okay, so so we'll talk about this thermal system quickly, and then I think after that we will not have much time. So in case, so we have till now we have talked about the electrical systems, we have talked about mechanical systems, and we had seen that how the basic variables and the basic elements of the systems are analogous, and this analogy is obtained after modeling the system in terms of using differential equation model. Similarly, we'll see one more example. So let us consider a thermal system. So this is the thermal system. So there is some liquid which is flowing into the system, and inside the thermal system there is a heater, there is a mixer. So because of using this heater and the mixer, there is the temperature of the liquid which is there in the tank, that is being increased, and then at the output we are getting the temperature of the outflowing liquid that is more than the temperature of the inflowing liquid. So if we want to model this kind of a thermal system, then the basic assumption of this linear model representation is that the temperature should be uniform. But in general, so this is like, as we had talked about, so this is a lumped parameter model that we are talking about. So we are assuming that the temperature of the whole liquid which is present inside this tank, that is same. It is not changing. So the temperature at this point is same to the temperature at this point, and this point. But ideally, if you see the like the practical system, then obviously the temperature might not be same at all the positions, because it depends on how well this mixer is working. So as of now we are assuming that there is a perfect mixing, and the temperature at any point of in the tank at any point in the tank is the temperature of the liquid is the same. Okay, so there are a few more assumptions. So one is that it is assumed that the tank is completely insulated and there is no heat loss that is happening from the tank to the external or the surrounding air. Then the second assumption is that the insulation, there is no heat storage which is present in the insulation. So this is the insulation of the tank. So this insulation, so this is insulation. So this insulation is perfect and there is no heat loss, and the insulation also, there is no heat storage in this insulation also. And we had and the third one I have already told, that the liquid in the tank that is kept at a uniform temperature, and the uniform temperature is obtained by mixing, by perfect mixing with the help of this mixer or stirrer. Okay, so now if let us say the steady state temperature of, so the inflowing liquid, the steady state temperature of the inflowing liquid is, let's say, theta I, and the temperature of the outflowing liquid is theta. Okay, and the heat input rate, which is from the heater which is coming to the liquid, that is given by H. And we are assuming that the liquid flow rate, which is happening, the rate of flow of liquid into the system, that is remaining constant. Okay, so if these are the cases, then we can say that, so now let us say that we increase the heat input previously was H. Now let's say that we increase the heat rate by a amount of delta H. So the moment that there is in heat input, or there is a change in the heat from the steady state, so what will happen is that the heat outflow rate will be increased. So let's say that it is increased by delta H1, and also there will be the heat that is stored, the heat storage rate of the liquid, that will also increase, that will increase by delta H2, and because of these increase in the heat, the overall temperature of the liquid will rise, and the overall the temperature of the outflowing liquid, that will also increase, by a quantity of delta theta. Okay, so now since we have assumed that the insulation is perfect, so then we can say that this increase in the heat outflow rate, that is only occurring due to the increase in the temperature of the outflowing liquid, because there is no heat loss. We are as of now we are considering that there is no heat loss. So then you can write this delta H1 is equals to Qs into delta theta, and you can substitute Qs by R, and you can say that R is basically the thermal resistance of the system. Similarly, if you write the equation for the rate of heat storage in the tank, that delta H2 will be equals to ms d delta theta by dt. So that ms you can substitute by C, and C will be known as the thermal capacitance. So now the overall heat stored in the system will be delta H equals to delta H, the input heat change and the output heat change. So that means, so this equation, now this differential equation here will be representing the overall the input output relationship between in the thermal system. So here you have thermal resistance, you have thermal capacitance. So you see, this is a first order differential equation that is being used to model this part. So this is, as of now, this is a sort of an ideal thermal system with no losses and all. So in order to represent this ideal thermal system using a differential equation model, so the differential equation looks something like this. You have RC d theta dt plus theta is equals to R into delta H. So in a similar way, if you have so this is like a perfect, or rather near to perfect system. So if you have disturbances and all in the system, okay, then maybe in the next class, it's already 12. So in the next class, we'll see, we'll continue discussion on this thermal system, and we'll see that if there is a disturbance, let us say there is some heat loss, then how this the differential equation which is used to model the system, how this is changing, that we'll see in the next class. And okay, so one more thing before I end the class. So next week, actually, I won't be able to take class on Thursday and Friday. So I would like to reschedule the Thursday's class on Tuesday, because I have seen that Tuesday 2:30 to 3:30 there is an off period for you. Is that right?
One second, ma'am.
Yeah, the timetable that you have shared for section A, it shows that Tuesday 2:30 to 3:30 you don't have any classes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so then next week we'll have our one class. The Thursday's class I'll take a makeup class for that on Tuesday 2:30 to 3:30, and then we'll again have class on Wednesday, and Thursday Friday we'll not have classes. So yeah, so that was one information that I wanted to convey to you all. I'll post the same information again later on, just in case you forget. Yeah, so that's all for today. So if you have any doubts, you can ask now.